right, Clay here. I've got Tucker with me, and we are in a brand new home in Brentwood, Tennessee, and just taking in the new construction. And we thought we'd have a conversation about the pros and cons of buying new versus old houses. Tucker, where do we even start with this conversation?
Well, great question, Clay. So when you start off, we're in a new construction home, as you can see. What's exciting about being in this type of situation is you really get to pick out a lot of your finishes, and you really get to pick out the game plan that you really want for the home. So if you're going to stay somewhere long term and you really want to get into a little bit more of the details, a little bit more of the finishes, this is a great place to start.
That's a great point. If the home is not already done, then oftentimes you have more flexibility to customize and get a product that you are part of the creation of. Of course, it depends on how far along the house is when you arrive at the house and decide to put it under contract. If you start from the very beginning, then you have more choices. If you catch on the later end, then you may have less choices. What are other things that we see with our customers that are buying new houses? Why do you see that our customers are picking new in your mind?
So sometimes when you're walking through an existing home, it might be a little bit more dated, which we might find out that some people just might not have the vision to go, I can't see through, the red walls and the red door and this type of carpet. I can't see myself picking these things out and see what the finished product's going to look like.
Yeah.
A home builder can really provide those visual opportunities for you to really see your vision come to life.
Yeah, that's a good point. One thing that I think is important when you're picking new versus existing homes, well, the new construction homes most often are going to be a little further out from established neighborhoods. You do have some examples of infill where they'll, tear down an existing home and rebuild in a very established location. But the majority of new construction neighborhoods are in developing areas. So you may be driving a little further. The neighborhood, you may have a lot of construction going on in the neighborhood, I think is a point worth making. So you may be driving over those manholes that are 2 inches out of the ground for the next year. You may not have your curb and gutter completely done. You may have construction trucks parked next to your house, depending on how much is being built out. So that's one thing to consider. But I will say this, once you go look at new homes, we have found that it's hard to go back to old homes. There is something about brand new everything that's hard to choose something older. It's kind of like new car versus used car.
Right.
Man, once you sit in a new car, get that new car smell, it's hard to get excited about a pre-owned vehicle. And I would liken that to the home buying process. What else has been our experience, Tucker, from working with folks who bought new? What else have you noticed about people buying new homes?
Sure. So people that are relocating from the western side of the United States, they like the newer home because it's usually in a planned development community. All the power lines are underground, which is what they're already used to.
Yep.
And so when you start bringing a lot of the eco-friendly and open floor plan, higher ceilings, it really resonates with people relocating from out of state.
Man, that's right. The way they built homes 30, 40, 50 years ago is different than they're building them now. So there's a lot more thoughtfulness about sidewalks, about underground utilities, not seeing power lines everywhere, about community amenities. Some of these neighborhoods are having, the pool and the pickleball and the tennis and the fitness center, and it all feels really, really well done. Whereas you go to 70s, 80s, 90s neighborhoods, it's a different vibe. So pros and cons with that for sure. And I think one other thing about existing homes versus brand new, the new homes, we're seeing higher ceilings in general. They feel more spacious, massive windows are coming in. There's just changes that have occurred over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Sure.
That I think people really are pulled to. What else about newer homes, you think?
One of the things that you brought up, when you're relocating and you have kids, what we've noticed, especially people that move in the summertime and you've got a planned development where it does have a community pool, it allows their kids to start connecting with people right before the school year starts.
Yeah.
And we've found that is pretty where you get excited for our clients, that when they get to have that connection and they start to really find their way throughout the community. So that's the big piece. The other thing is with the older homes, you really get a nice neighborhood where all the trees are mature. You get the overhang. I feel like I'm in watching Father of the Bride, and it has that nice feeling to it. And then with some of the new construction, some of the trees are still a little bit smaller, and it looks like, wow, it's going to take us 20 years for this tree to grow. But it ends up happening pretty fast, and then you really start to get those feelings.
No, that's exactly right. And I will say this also, one other thing I thought of, new houses, you're going to get massive walk-in closets. You're not going to be compromising on things that old houses maybe have 8-foot ceilings on a ranch-style home. You're not going to see that in new construction really ever anymore. You're going to see 9, 10-foot ceilings. You're going to see more thoughtfulness with the layout. You're going to see and then again, all your bathrooms are brand new. Your flooring surfaces are going to be brand new. Everything's brand new. Roof, HVAC. You're not having to think about replacing stuff nearly as much if you go down the path of buying a brand new house.
Sure. One thing we've noticed in Brentwood, so 15 years ago, most of your homes had a 2-car garage. All of a sudden, we moved to 3.
That's exactly right.
Now the bare minimum's 4, and sometimes they're 2 stories. So people that are car lovers and they put the elevators in to have multiple cars, that's been exciting to watch as well.
That's a great point. I will say this. Let's talk about one of the negatives of new construction. To me, something when we were helping buyers, I always try to point out is that if you buy a house that's not done yet, it may be 2 things. It may be several months out. It could be a long time period out, and it may not be perfectly predictable when it's going to be done. You have things like codes inspections. You have things like weather delays. You have things like subcontractor delays, material delays. So it's not perfectly predictable. But the main thing is if you're borrowing money, if you're getting a mortgage, you don't know where interest rates are going to be in 6 months. Hopefully they're lower than they are now. Depending on when you buy something, they may be a lot higher. So it brings a level of unpredictability that I think is worth mentioning if you're buying a new house as part of the process.
Sure. When it's an existing home, you close, you get the keys, you start moving in, or you're bringing in painters and flooring contractors and you're making a few changes. New construction, you moved in and you might have another month to 6 weeks where things are still getting fixed or something's getting adjusted. They're working on the sprinkler system. I always feel like there's always people still around even after the closing.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it's worth saying also, if you buy from a big builder who's got a huge production crew and they have all their own employees, it's a different process than if you buy a one-off house from a spec builder who may not have as much control over the timeline and the process. I think the ones that seem like they have the challenges is when people get in really early and then the house has delays and it may be a year before your house is done. And there's a lot of unpredictable things. And the other thing I'll say this is also, if you buy a house really early on, you may have something in your mind of what it's going to look like when it's done. That may or may not be reality. So the further along a house is, the more simple and like straightforward it is, because you kind of know what to expect. If you get in a house real early, like this house here, for instance, to the studs, you may have a vision in your mind of what it's going to look like exactly. It may or may not be exactly that. So something just else to note, I think.
Sure. So when you're writing the wording in the contract of what you want it to be and what you want it to look like, that's how you see it. It's always interesting to see how the builder and then how does the contractor see how that really looks in real life. So sometimes there needs to be a little bit extra communication, or just, that's just where we come in and go, this is how they might see it. Let's add some more details so we get closer to your vision.
That's exactly right. And I guess it's worth saying also a couple of different categories. There's a full-on custom house category where you as the buyer really drive the whole process. I think it depends on who owns the land and who's hired the builder. Then there's a spec house buyer, which is a builder owns a property. They've decided to build something, whether they have a buyer or not. They're going to take it all the way to completion. Maybe you come in before that house is completely done and you get to change a few things, but they're the spec builder. The dynamic is different when that's the case. And then I think you have the third category, which is a builder just building houses, and there are neighborhoods, and like you're going to come in at the very end and they're going to finish it exactly where they're going to finish it. And there's just different dynamics depending on the scenario that you find yourself in. So just a few nuances there that are, I think, worth thinking about.
Sure, and I think one of the first questions we usually have conversations with is, how long do you plan to be in the home? You get some people that they're moving every 3 to 4 years, they're relocating with the company. Might not be the best time to build a custom home, a lot of high-end detail. You might not get all your money, especially if you're going to leave in about 2 or 3 years. So just something to think about when we're looking for the long-term game plan.
That's a great point, and I think also some of the strangest houses I have seen as a real estate agent have been custom homes that were built, 10, 20, 30 years ago, but they were custom homes. Custom to me sometimes says this may not be a mainstream floor plan, or they may have some idea that may not be a market acceptable idea. So sometimes that custom thing, you have to really watch, am I making good decisions that are, this is a good investment for resale? So the custom homes is kind of something to keep an eye on, and make sure you're getting, I think, advice from designers, architects, real estate agents, that kind of thing, as you make those big decisions.
Sure, so an example of that would be granite countertops. There's a lot of people in a custom home, they want really dark granite. It was something that they had way back in the day. They love it. Well, if you talk to a designer today, they want really light granite. So what's acceptable to resale and finding the next people that are going to own the home, that's an example.
That's a great point. And I think it's so smart to consult with designers because they're on the front lines of seeing what's changing, what new products are available, and maybe it's quartz, and maybe the colors are going a certain direction. Before you invest heavy in something that's going to be really dated or on its way out, those designers can really speak to that. And so I think that's a huge point to bring in professional designers who can kind of help you make those design decisions whenever possible.
Okay. Anything else, Clay?
No, I think that's all of my thoughts. Hopefully this makes sense and you got a little bit of value out of this. Again, we're just talking about pros and cons, new construction versus existing. Just wanted, if you are thinking about buying or selling in the Nashville area, we'd love to answer any questions you have. Feel free to shoot a text and an email, drop a comment, let us know how we can help you. And just remember, no matter if you're moving in 9 days or 90 days, we want to help you connect all the dots so you can make that right move. Until next time, hope to show you around town.